Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and if you can believe it, we are on the final set of chapters for Volume 5 of Heaven Official's Blessing. I can't believe we're at the end of Volume 5. It's very, very weird. I wanted to go back through and kind of recap what happened in Volume 5, but I figured I would do that after the reaction before we started the discussion. So I kind of go through and be like, what happened in Volume 5? Volume 5 has been insanity. I thought, you know, Volume 1, starting out the journey. Volume 2, meeting Chi-Rong, setting up Lian's past, his first meeting with Hua-Chong. Volume 3 is all of the insanity that is the flashback arc with Lian and the fall of Shanla, then going back. And then Volume 4 was all of the mystery and intrigue about the Reverend of Empty Words and the trauma of the Windmaster and Heshan being revealed. And then this volume was just chapter after chapter of insanity. It was just chaos. This volume's nothing but chaos. This cover is the most deceiving. This cover's like, oh, well, it just looks like Lian and Hua-Chong are just going to sit there on a rock and braid each other's hair, which granted, half the book they are kind of sitting on a rock and staring longingly into each other's eyes, but it's such a misleading cover because you think, oh, this will be such a tame volume. That's what I thought going into this. Nope. So we're on the last set of chapters for Volume 5, chapters 170 to 172. It's very interesting. This is by far, it's been the second longest volume. Volume 4 was the longest. It had 12 parts for my reactions, 12 parts of the series, and this had 11, so it's very, very big. I've already done the math. Volume 6 is only going to have 9 parts, which is fine, but it's like a fourth shorter than Volume 4, so better be good. I was like, why is this so much shorter? But then, you know, I'm sure that you know, sometimes quality over quantity, right? Sometimes maybe the page numbers may not be as big, but what you're going to get in those chapters is going to be something, because we've had that happen in this series where I get to like a 2-chapter segment. I'm like, oh, this will just be 2 chapters. No big deal. And then it's like 2 hours worth of conversation. So I'm really excited to get to Volume 6. It feels weird after this week that we'll only have 3 volumes left. We're officially like well over the halfway point, but I'm excited. So yeah. Finding the 11th out of 11. We've been with this volume for nearly 3 months, which is weird, and we'll only be with Volume 6 for like 2.5 months. So it's crazy, right? But yeah, I want to talk about the Manhwa chapter that came out today, chapter 93. I want to talk about it, and as well as a few tiny little comments. We might as well do the comments first. I like the idea that Anime Annie, we were talking about Modao Zushi comparisons with Heaven Official's Blessing, which they are such different series. But Yin Yu, Anime Annie was noting that Yin Yu is like the winning of Heaven Official's Blessing. And I was like, oh my God, he is. Bless him. I feel so bad for Yin Yu because he's like, I'm just trying to help. And it just goes awry. But I thought that was really, really good. And then Couscous and Sarah Linda were pointing this out. I appreciate y'all pointing this out because it's been a long time since Volume 2. A long time. And they were noting that the Ominous Star and Star of Solitude are 2 different things. And I was labeling them as one thing in the last set of chapters or 2. Whereas Lian is born under the Ominous Star, which is when they look at the murals in the Divine Temple, Hua-Chong notes that the Crown Prince of Wuyong was also born under the Ominous Star. And then Hua-Chong was born under the Star of Solitude, which means that bad things happen to everyone around him except him, unless everything can be nullified with the intervention of a savior. And my theory back in Volume 2 was the idea that Lian is that savior. The reason why Hua-Chong has such good luck, despite everything about him, is because he believes so much in Lian, and that nullifies the bad luck. That's always been my theory. The only thing I will say about this is that I hope there's a twist. Because if Lian's figured out that he's the former Crown Prince of Wuyong and he's like the reincarnated version of him because they're both born under the Ominous Star or whatever, I mean, that's cool. I'll be like, oh, that's a neat thing, I guess. But it just feels like there should be a twist, right? Because so far MXTX has given us, like, we think one thing and then we find one little piece of information that completely changes everything. And right now it just feels like kind of obvious. I don't know. It feels like we've cracked the code. At this point, I'm like, okay, well, the Goshi are the four Goshi are the 4 deputies of the Crown Prince, and Lian's the reincarnated Crown Prince. They're both born under the Ominous Star. It's a repeat of Wuyong to Shanla. It just feels too it feels too obvious for MXTX, and I don't know what to do with that. So I'm like, there has to be, because Hua Chong is adamant that Shi Lian is wrong, and we know that Hua Chong has been right most of the time. So I'm like, okay, if Hua Chong's saying that he's wrong, is he's either lying to Shi Lian, which seems out of character, or he knows something he just can't tell Shi Lian for whatever reason. So he's just trying to say like, hey, don't come to conclusions until we know all the evidence. So I'm hoping there's some evidence that proves it wrong. I mean, I'm not going to be mad if it turns out that Shi Lian's the Crown Prince of Wuyong. It just feels like, it feels obvious. And MXTX has made it to where there's always been like a twist that's proven us wrong. And I love surprises, and I love being proven wrong. I love being like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And so if it turns out to be right, I'll be like, okay, but we're like near the final arc, and where's the twist? So I say this as you all are probably sitting there with your mouths, like your fists stuffed down your mouth, being like, Romania. So don't worry. I'm sure the twist is coming. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Maybe I'll be ready for it. But we'll see. We'll see. But I'm glad that you both let me know that there was a difference, that Hua Chong is the Star of Solitude, Shi Lian is the ominous star. Just do that with what we will, right? So let's talk about chapter 93 of the Manhwa real quick. Star Ember did not let down when it comes to drawing Shi Lian with the little butterfly being like, what's wrong? And I love that Mu Qing and Function are struggling so much, and Shi Lian's like, but the butterfly, he's so little. It's so cute. And something else that you notice in this panel is that as the butterflies are coming out to attack Function and Mu Qing, you see there's like red, it looks like petals, like flower petals instead of blood. So I wonder if that's like Star Ember kind of foreshadowing that we're going to get the flower petal. Star Ember's like, I didn't want to wait to draw the flower petal rain, so I just put some in here. That's really good. I don't remember exactly how Hua Chong shows up and takes Shi Lian away through the portal. I don't quite remember how. I'd have to go back to volume 2. But I do love the idea that we see his hand come out and him slowly like get around Shi Lian's waist. I kind of like that, because then you see Shi Lian get plucked, like Hua Chong grabs him from behind and takes him away. It does make it seem more like Shi Lian was taken away by Hua Chong and he was kidnapped. So if they tell the upper court that he was kidnapped, it seems more plausible. Now, did Shi Lian put up a fight? No. But the way the artwork does, it does make it seem more like he was actually taken by Hua Chong, which is great. And I love that we get to see Mu Qing and Function's expressions being like, the communication ray, hurry up, we gotta tell people about this. Our crown prince has been taken away by this handsome stranger. And then, of course, I love Hua Chong, Star Ember drawing his head next to Shi Lian's head, being like, long time no see. Did you miss me? I didn't miss you. I forget, because Hua Chong has been very tame around Shi Lian for the most part. Very tame this last volume around him, because he's trying to make a good impression. But I forget that Hua Chong is like, he hates the upper court, he hates the heavenly officials, and he's just like, hey, sup bitches, remember me? I'm taking my man and going. It's very funny. And we have the red string tied around his finger. So fun. So fun. Something else that I really like is that I love, well, one, the way that Star Ember draws Shi Lian. She draws Shi Lian looking so, she draws Shi Lian looking so innocent and doughy-eyed and like a deer in the headlights, like, well, so long, like, what's going on? Like, I'm so sorry, I burned down your temple. And Hua Chong's like, I don't care, I had insurance. Like, you know, I love the way that Star Ember draws them, but just the little tiny details of Hua Chong, like the back of his head, like the butterfly, like all the tiny little silver, like Hua Chong is decked to the nines, has all of the frills on, has all the accessories, all the tiny things, and then Shi Lian's just got his hair up in a messy bun and like sweats on. It's a definition of like the top of the relationship that just like gets all out and like fancies himself up, and then Shi Lian's just like, I don't know, I just put some sweatpants on and a shirt, are we good? But what I was gonna say is, one thing that I really like is that when I was first reading this part, it didn't hit me that this was happening at night. So in my head, it was still daylight, like in the heavenly realm, it looks daylight all the time. And so I was thinking of it being daylight when him and Shilian went off, but it's nighttime. So I like the tones and the textures that Star Ember puts into the story at this point. I also love that Hua Chong is like, I injured your arm, so please don't be mad at me, Gege. Like, it's so crazy because Hua Chong is so handsome and so smooth, but he's just so afraid of Shilian not liking him, and Shilian's just like so oblivious. It's just, oh my god, it's amazing. And then this artwork, I love the height difference. The height difference of Hua Chong being ever so much taller than Shilian. Just got Ming in his hand, right? Just holding that scimitar, just right there with all the frills. And Shilian's like, well, I'm fine. I also love this part. Shilian's like, oh, my right hand. Like, I rushed towards you. Like, he's so, like, sincere and innocent. And Ming reacts to it. I love that Ming is like, oh, like he gets kind of turned on. And Hua Chong's like, shut up, stop it. Again, I am fully convinced that Ming is like, Hua Chong just took his dick and made it a sword so that he wouldn't have any sexual desire towards Shilian. I mean, I'm sure Hua Chong still has his parts, but I feel like he took all of his sexual desire and put it in this sword so he can be like, that way I can be around Gege and not feel like I want to like pounce him every 5 seconds, right? And he's like, nothing, and he just slaps the sword. I love it. I love it. It's great. And then, just Shilian with the way that he looks, like scratching his head and with his doughy eyes. Like, it's so beautiful. And then Hua Chong, like, how serious his face looks. He's like, if you want to see me, no matter what number you roll on the dice, it'll bring you to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then that line, I will always be there. And just him, like how buff he looks, like so broad and like just so powerful, and he has like all the jewels, everything. Like Star Ember draws Hua Chong looking like a man among men, and just being like, "I'll be there for you, Shilian. I got your back. Don't you worry." Like, just, I love how Star Ember draws them. It's so good. I honestly, Hua Chong looks so stoic in all of these panels. I'm really excited to see what Star Ember does when Qirong gets involved and things get more comical. I'm living for the moment we see Hua Chong, Shi Wudu, Heshan in his glory, like all these characters that we've not seen illustrated by Star Ember. I'm so ready to see, including the Goshi. Can't wait. And of course, the white face, the white no face. I can't wait to see that moment where they're swinging there. It's going to be so good. But yeah. And then we have Hua Chong looking ever so stoically, realizing like, oh, someone's coming. And I forgot about this part in the Manhwa, honestly. I forgot about this part where they had just left, and then Lan Chanshu shows up being like, we still have to duel. And this is around the time that I think Hua Chong turns him into a Daruma doll. I'm pretty sure he turns him into a Daruma doll to take him with him, and then they run into Qirong. I'm pretty sure that's what happens. That seems like it's correct, which is kind of ironic that we're doing... Like, Hua Chong just turned Qirong into a Daruma doll, and now we're dealing with Lan Chanshu being one. So, that's really funny. But yeah, what a great chapter. It said on Bilibili the chapters were coming out every Saturday now, so I guess I got them translated, so maybe I won't have to wait so long to see them. Maybe? I don't know. I'm very curious what that means. So, it said the next chapter was coming out next weekend, so... Hopefully that means I can, I may start volume 6 before then. I may start volume 6 before then, before the chapter comes out. So there may be a little lull, but we'll see, right? But I'm really excited. So we'll just have to find out, right? But yeah, so when we last left off, Hua Chong was turned into a Daruma doll, and things seemed like Shanji has gone off to go find Pei Ming because of Hua Chong tricking her, and Guzi is still there, and Shilian has Guzi. And they're still tethered to the mountains. They can't get too lost, right? They can't get too lost. And Lingwen is still somewhere with the Brocade Immortals, so we'll just have to wait and see, right? It's starting to storm outside, like it's going to rain, so what a better thing to do on a rainy day than read Heaven Official's Blessing, right? Right. So, I'm sorry for taking so long, y'all, but we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to start chapters 170 to 172 of Heaven Official's Blessing, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Chapter 170, The Resentful Female Ghost. Flames of jealousy burn the affection. Well, okay, so Shanji, huh? Hua Chong raised his hand slightly, and with that silver butterfly in his palm, he brought it next to Shilian's ear. Oh, and he heard Pei Ming's voice. Little dummy, do you hear that strange noise? Quit calling Banyu little dummy. Stop. That's so silly. It was because Pei Ming had been... It was probably because Pei Ming had been chasing skirts for a long time. Even if Lian knew Pei Ming felt nothing for Banyu, the way he spoke still made people ponder. Oh, and Banyu replied grimly, I'm not a dummy. I heard. The noise was really strange. I don't think it's General Hua coming back. I love that Banyu's just like, get away. Of course it wasn't, because it was clearly the sound that Shanji made while hopping with her broken legs. Oh no! There wasn't a long series of... It says dong dong in this version, but we know it's like thump thump in the books. Before the other two fell silent, and what followed was the crazed laughter of a woman. Oh no! The laughter echoed and resounded in the empty underground city and carried over to the silver butterfly, and then some white noise crackled in the transmission, making it scarier than if they heard it in person. Naturally, this was the laugh of the overjoyed and painfully hateful Shanji, who had finally saw Pei Ming once more. And didn't the silver butterfly lead her in the opposite direction? She's smarter than expected. It turns out she'd been chasing after the wraith butterfly like mad, curiously fast, and ran all the way to the end of the main street, but there was no one there. And so she was once a female general after all, and noticed she'd been led away. Oh no. She should have returned to Qi-Rong, but her mind was filled with Pei Ming, so instead she ran around the opposite direction, throwing Qi-Ring completely out of mind. Qi-Rong, I love that Qi-Rong's just like, nope, forget him. I found my man. Oh my gosh. She found it funny for some reason, but it was hard to describe the sentiment exactly. Right, that Qi-Rong just gets not paid attention to. He quickly brought along those escaped captives, and the group rushed to Wu Yong's divine temple at the center of the city. I love that Lian's like having a joke at Qi-Rong's expense, and just like, I shouldn't joke about this, but it is kind of funny that she just completely forgets him. The female ghost had waited for Pei Ming for too long. Just by hearing her laughter, it was easy to imagine how twisted, crazy her face must be. Pei Ming was also probably startled by her and was in shock for a long time before he spoke up. Oh, you're... Who are you? Oh, no! Oh, no! You're trying to piss me off on purpose. You don't know who I am? Oh, no. Oh, there's no way General Pei is actually doing this on purpose. Or did he really not recognize her? Probably the latter. After all, if the rumors were true, in these past centuries, Pei Ming had affairs with at least over 1,000 beauties. How could he remember each one? I hope he used protection, especially an old one from so many hundreds of years ago. Besides, the incident on Mount Yuzhun with the ghost bride was passed over to Pei Su to manage. He never appeared himself and never saw Shanji. Oh my god. Right, you're angering me on purpose. I won't fall for it. You want to lie and say you don't remember me. You want to lie to me. Then she screeched, who is this little whore? Aren't your standards for beauty usually high? What, trying different flavors this time? And Banyu's like, what? And Pei Ming's like, what? Oh no. Although both made confused noises, this resentful tone seemed to have jogged Pei Ming's memory, and he knit his brows. Shanji, how did you become like this? Only then did Lian remember that the Shanji right now must be disheveled. Her eyes were red like a fierce ghost, donned in bright red bridal robes, the lower hems filthy and unkempt, crawling sluggishly but dangerously like a crocodile on the ground. This is pretty much how they saw her right now. It was really difficult to link her to that female general who was noble and cool, so no wonder acquaintances couldn't recognize her at first glance. How did I become like this? How dare you ask how I've become like this? Isn't this all your fault? I did this all for you! She's charged at the protection circle, Hua Chong informed. Oh, no worries. Ryuyi can hold her off. Just as he said, a shriek was heard from the silver butterfly. Shanji must have bounced back and sent flying over 30 meters away and dropped into the darkness once more. Pei Ming's voice came. His Highness's spiritual device is pretty useful. I'll have to forge one for myself sometime, too. If you knew how it was forged, you wouldn't say so. Why? What? How dare you throw that line at us? How dare you give us that, Lian? Explain. What? Of all times you give us that now? Damn it. But before his thought was complete, Pei Ming shouted, what are you doing? Stop. Don't think you can keep hiding in there. What did she do? She's toppled the divine temple and the stone ceiling collapsed. So that was it. Shanji was bounced back from Rui's protection circle and couldn't enter. She knocked down the entire temple instead. Are they all right? Little Pei and Banyu are both there too. They're fine. Pei Ming shielded them. The moment the stone ceiling collapsed boomingly, Pei Ming shielded Pei Su and Banyu under his body. Then that's fine. The protection circle still won't break from this. Are you crazy? Even if you topple the sky, you won't be able to get in. General Pei, watch out! The reactions all happened at the same time, and amidst the chaos, Lian heard the sound of a sharp sword piercing a chest. There was no question it was Pei Ming who'd been stabbed. Well, what happened? The protection circle broke. That's impossible. Wait, a sword? He finally understood what Shanji was planning. So that was it. Who said I wanted to enter? Oh! Pei Ming, look who's here. It's your old sweetheart. Shanji toppling the divine temple. Wrong Guang! Oh no! It wasn't just her throwing a crazy fit from rage. It wasn't because she wanted to enter the protection circle. Her goal was to crush the 2 ghost sealing clay pots that Banyu placed in the circle, release the goats, and have them attack from the inside. Oh my god! Oh no! After Rongguang escaped the pot, he quickly turned in the form of a sword and stabbed Pei Ming. Pei Ming seemed to be trying to pull him out, but Rongguang was doggedly unyielding, that sword piercing his body. You wish it's time to die! Pei Ming gritted his teeth. Is the other pot okay? To be attacked by both sides. If Kamo was out of the mix, it'd be game over. Yeah! Banyu answered, yes, Kamo is still sealed. Oh my god. The situation was growing dire, and Lian was starting to get anxious. Just as he was about to quicken his pace, however, Hua Chong suddenly stopped in his step. So long. On the back of Hua Chong's hand rested another wraith butterfly, seeming to be whispering something to him. After he finished listening to the report, he looked up and smiled. Okay. There's no need to panic. We'll be fine even if we don't rush over. On the other end, with Rongguang pierced through Pei Ming's chest, Shanji was like a red gecko as she gripped his boots before climbing up his leg. Oh my god! With the way she was dressed and the ghost fire looming over her head, she was the epitome of a crazed female ghost. You! Oh, Pei darling. In her current position, it couldn't be said whether she wanted to strangle him to death or tightly embrace him. Suddenly, in the periphery of her vision, she saw Pei Su, who was being shielded behind Pei Ming, and she recalled it was this cold and stoic martial god who had apprehended her the last time, and she gritted her teeth. You little mutt! Just as her claws were about to swipe down, another hand seized her wrists. Both wrists were equally pale, and when she looked to see, it was Banyu who stopped her. When Shanji saw another woman by Pei Ming's side, her heart burned. I haven't even come for your wretched little life, but here you are, giving yourself up to me. Then she grabbed for Banyu's head. However, Banyu wasn't one of those good and obedient little brides who would stand around and wait to be scratched to death, and Shanji's other wrist was seized without fail. Shanji was a female ghost while alive. Was a female general while alive. She knew that her strength would put most men to shame. A typical female ghost could only let themselves be beaten. Yet she hadn't thought that this little girl, who looked though so thin and weak, like a simple breeze could knock her over, possessed such terrifying power in her arms, almost stronger than Shanji herself. Not only were both of her wrists cuffed and unable to move, when the two matched eyes, Shanji was even more stunned. The little girl's eyes were full of aggression and murderous intent, like the shimmer of a blade in combat. It reminded her of the battlefield. Her heart lurched and she threw her hands to break free of the hold. Oh, Banyu protecting Pei Su! Yes! Banyu picked up Pei Su and hopped meters away, landing on her feet. Let go of General Pei! The sword buried in Pei Ming taunted. Pei Ming, you sure are lucky with women. Do you see 2 female ghosts are fighting over you? Shanji clung to Pei Ming like a contorted snake, her 10 fingers choking his neck. She said, your little lover seems to have some skill. Pei Ming coughed a mouthful of blood. I don't! She's not my lover! You're still trying to deny it. If she's not your lover, then why would she tell me to let you go? If my old hag was here, she'd also tell you to let me go. By your definition, would she be your lover too? Would she be my lover too? Oh my god! Oh, I simultaneously love this. But it's so tense. Only his frivolous nature could be blamed at this point, calling people little dummy for no good reason. And Shanji was mad with jealousy. Oh, what, you're afraid to admit it now? Weren't you all intimate when calling her before? Didn't you used to be more open when you got your hands on a new flame? You've always been so honest with me, not caring for my feelings at all. Do you know how much I've suffered? Why are you scared of admitting it now? General Pei, are you afraid to die now? Or do you really love her so much you couldn't bear to have me touch a single finger of hers? Still a far distance from the divine temple, Lian watched this scene play out from afar and felt he really couldn't bear to watch anymore. He looked back. So long, how about we go up and rescue them first? He laughed. No need to panic, Gege. Someone else will show up on our behalf. Besides, if we go over now, Shanji still won't release her chokehold on Pei Ming. That was true. With hostages around, things would indeed be rather inconvenient. Yin Yu and the farmers were also watching nervously, and they all said, "Yeah, I could feel that female ghost's love had morphed into hatred. She's going nuts." "I don't think so. I'm sure she couldn't do it." "Want to eat some melon seeds? I'll give you another handful, thanks!" "How can everybody be in the mood to munch on melon seeds?" "Your Highness, didn't you munch a bunch too?" "What?" Only then did Lian realize that while he was so focused on the show earlier, he had unconsciously received a handful of melon seeds that had been passed over and he had eaten them all. Oh, how rude of me! All of this is happening to Pei Ming, and Lian and them were like, "Oh my god, can you believe this?" What? Oh my god. On the other end, Pei Ming was at the end of his rope. "Shanji, how could you not think that way every time? It's been so many years. Why can't we just shake hands and walk away? Why must you be like this?" Her hands strangling him squeezed harder, her almond eyes bulging. "You messed with me first, and you want to shake hands and walk away? As if! You haven't changed a bit. It's precisely because of this that we didn't work out." She thrust her face and cried in rage. "Like this? Like what? Am I not beautiful enough? Because I refused to give you Yushi's battle plans and army secrets? You refused them yourself. You said you didn't like that. I was strong, so I was willing to abandon even my legs. Do I not love you enough? Who can love you more than me? But you won't look my way, not even once these past 100 of years. When have you ever come to see me?" Pei Ming pushed away the face that was pressed so close to his and shouted, "It's because I know that you'd go crazy if I came to see you that I didn't visit." Shanji grabbed a hold of Ming Guang's sword in his chest and stabbed it a few more inches and then pulled it out. Pei Ming puked another mouthful of blood. "Say it. In the name of your heavenly official status, swear that from now on there's only me. Swear that you'll never look at another woman again, that your eyes will rot if you do." Guang was also enjoying this. "Hurry and say it, Pei Ming. Say it so you can salvage your life." Pei Ming cursed, "Shut up! Damn it, I had never thought, despite not dying on the battlefields, not dying under the world's most sacred sword, that I'd die at the hands of a crazy female ghost." Not having gotten the answer she desired, Shanji was thoroughly enraged, and her claws shot out, gripping his head. Lian really couldn't wait any longer. "Song Long, I really think things are getting out of hand. Will the person you spoke of make it in time? If not, I'll go." "It's fine," Hua Chong said. "Gege, look, here they come." Just as the words left his lips, the enraged and mad Shanji completely froze. It was as someone had cast a petrification spell on her. Her body and her expression were frozen. Pei Ming had already been stabbed by repeatedly a number of times, his puked blood covering the floor. From within the darkness, there came the sound of clean and crisp ox hooves. Yes, I was like, is it going to be them? Steady and calm. Clack, 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 clack. Soon after, a person riding a black ox appeared before them. The one riding the black ox was a woman in verdant robes. Her eyes clear, her expression calm and quiet. Her head was held high as they approached languidly, like she was watching something from afar. Pei Ming was stunned. "Queen Yushi!" "Oh!" The woman inclined her head and looked at him, her demeanor unchanged. She gave a slight smile, bowing her head to return the greeting. Lian was shocked too. "Queen Yushi?" Hua Chong replied, "That's right. The current Rainmaster of the Heavens, the 16th princess of the Kingdom of Yushi, Yushi Huang, was also the last queen of the Kingdom of Yushi." Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! And it's raining outside! It's raining, not men! Oh my god! Okay! Alright! Chapter 171, The Last Princess. Throat slit before the palace gates. Oh! Is this the tale? What? I've never had the fortune to meet the Rainmaster, so I didn't know the Rainmaster was a princess. On the other side, Shanji gritted her teeth. Why can't I move? The Rainmaster pulled her eyes away from Pei Ming and said gently, "I brought the Yulong sword." Yulong means rain dragon. The Yulong sword, Lian wondered. Of course, Lian's gonna go into like nerd mode with the swords. "It's the sacred guardian sword of the Kingdom of Yushi, wielded by all of its rulers throughout history," Hua Chong replied. "After the Rainmaster ascended, she forged it as a spiritual device, and naturally possessed the power to stupefy the people of Yushi. Shanji was a traitor. Fear and guilt can still consume her heart, so of course she can do naught but obey." Oh my god! The Rainmaster told her not to move, and therefore she couldn't move. Guang exclaimed, "Well, you can't move, I'll do it myself." Then, just as he was about to stab Pei Ming again, before his blade even pierced half an inch, there was an explosion of red smoke, and clunk! The sword that pierced Pei Ming's chest disappeared. A tiny blade, no longer than a finger, fell to the ground, and Rongguang yelled furiously, "What's going on? Why can't I move either?" Lian and the others finally stopped watching from afar and walked out. Hua Chong glanced at that tiny, toy-like Mingguang sword on the ground and smirked. Much better. Oh, okay. Let him go, Shanji, the Rain Master said. Shanji's hand started to drop uncontrollably from Pei Ming's neck, but she refused to yield, her hands quivering. Well, I won't! I already caught him. I won't let go. If you must grab hold of something to feel better, why not pick up what you've tossed away and hold it in your hands anew? What? The power of the sacred guardian sword was too strong after all, and Shanji was forcibly yanked off, falling back to the ground unkempt and miserable. What right do you have to discipline me? Do you really take yourself for the ruler of the kingdom? I think you've forgotten how your queenship came to be. I won't acknowledge you. I won't. The Rain Master was silent. On the side, Banyu snatched the opportunity and hurled out a pot, sucking Shanji in instantly, and swiftly sealed it. Okay. And so, the source of all the mess was finally subdued. Lian approached Pei Ming's side and helped him up. General Pei, are you all right? This won't kill me, Pei Ming said. I say, Your Highness, were you all perhaps here a while already? Lian replied, oh, what do you mean? Pei Ming picked up the now tiny sealed Mingguang sword in his hand. Crimson Rain sought flower, how tough is your seal? It won't break with just some pressure, will it? Of course not, Hua Chong replied. Unless you hold the hilt and apply spiritual pressure, and mentally give it permission to be released, otherwise the seal won't break by accident or by deception, no matter what. Only then did Pei Ming heave a long sigh. As for the farmers who escaped Qirong's capture, they all rushed forward. Oh, Lord Rainmaster! The ones on this side turned around. Lian inclined his head in a bow. Queen Yushi. The Rainmaster had dismounted the black ox, rope in hand, and she also bowed her head to return the courtesy. Your Royal Highness. During this greeting, Lian inadvertently saw her neck and was slightly taken aback. But then he soon said, back then during Shanla's drought, that my lord would lend me your Rainmaster hat and aid me in my time of need. I was never able to thank you in person. Now my wish has come true today. Then he bent forward and bowed deeply. The Rainmaster stood still and waited until his bow was over before she replied, I had thought if I didn't let your Royal Highness bow this once, my lord might never relax. Now that it's over, let us forget this affair. The tone of her voice was clear and serene, slow and calm, with a bit of a smile, looking particularly tranquil. Suddenly a voice called out, Hey, Pei Ming, isn't this embarrassing? Needing a woman to save you? And it's that Yushi Huang, no less. The Rainmaster's demeanor remained unchanged, still very at ease, but Pei Ming didn't look that comfortable anymore. Lian noticed this and quickly slapped a talisman on the little sword to seal its mouth. Ah, we're going to talk about this. The ox held by the Rainmaster also suddenly started blowing harsh breaths at Pei Ming's direction, shaking his head and swishing its tail. Although it wasn't aiming at Hua Chong, Lian knew that when bulls saw red, they'd get angry and recalled the many painful experiences, having been chased and struck. Oh no, Lian! Now he's been chased by bulls? Really? So he quickly blocked in front of Hua Chong, afraid the ox would be further provoked by the red color of Hua Chong's robes. Pei Ming had to say something at this point. Thus he scratched his nose and said politely, My thanks to the Queen Yushi for rescuing little Pei. Is Pei Ming? Was he crushing on the Rainmaster a wee bit? Is that why he didn't go to see her? What? The Rainmaster was also courteous. It's nothing. Banyu came over and tugged the Rainmaster's sleeve. Lord Rainmaster, Pei Sugege passed out from the hunger. Of course. Hua Chong swept a look. Let's go back up first. Banyu's problem was most effectively solved by the people of Yushi country. Since the Rainmaster ruled agriculture, food often never left their persons. Once they were back above ground, night had passed and the sun had come out. The Rainmaster instantly retrieved seeds from the satchel on the ox, found a field, planted them on the spot, and it didn't take long before a small field of crops was grown. And then all those who'd been starving cheered. Oh my God, what a power! She could instantly make food. Lian remembered that Guzi probably hadn't eaten well the past few days either, and woke him up. However, the first thing Guzi asked when he woke up was where his dad was, and then he thought his dad had deserted him again, and he cried and sobbed for a good while. And Lian had no choice but to give him that extremely ugly Daruma doll to hold. When Guzi heard this was his dad, it was like he was given treasure, and he stopped crying, hugging it tightly as he ate. Oh my God. Oh no. Oh. Meanwhile, Lian, Hua Chong, and the Rainmaster, and Pei Ming stood on the side to discuss serious business. They could already see the kiln up ahead. Upon closer look, the lower half of the mountain was covered with large patches of crimson red, like that of blood, and the upper half was covered with harsh layers of snow. Lian spoke up. Not just General Pei Jr., but Banyu, Guzi, and the others must all stay here. They can't go onwards anymore. If the need arises, we might have to climb the snowy mountain. Pei Ming was dabbing medicinal smoke from a small bottle over his wound, shaking his head as he sighed. I've been unlucky this entire way, hurdles after hurdles. Those words really did describe his journey thus far. Incredibly unfortunate, and he was feeling quite miserable. Is it because he's been around Hua Chong, who is unlucky to everybody but Lian? The Rainmaster was sitting poised next to Lian, and after some contemplation, she said, Your Highness, your mission this time is to subdue all monsters and ghosts who possess the potential to become a supreme. Then there is one you may need to watch out for. Lian became excited. Did Lord Rainmaster run into something on the road? Yes. On the way here, I met a young man dressed in white. Ah, the one my lord speaks of. We've already caught wind of him on the road. Many of the monsters and ghosts were afraid of him, and we almost ran into him too. Has my lord seen him in person? How did you get away? Much ashamed. The Rainmaster said if it wasn't for this guardian steed, astounding leg power, and that young man's lack of interest in dispute, it would have been difficult to say how the meeting would have ended. What did he look like? Lian pressed. It wasn't clear. Because his head was wrapped in bandages. Was it Long Ying? Your Highness knows him? I'm not sure. Long Ying is in the Ghost City for sure, right? Hua Chong also looked serious and only answered after a pause. Well, he was. But whether he still is, that's hard to say. Gege, why don't you verify further? Lian thus continued his questions. Lord Rainmaster, you said this white-clad young man had his head wrapped in bandages. Was he about 10 years of age? Maybe a little bit older? Either way, a scrawny boy. Yet unexpectedly, the Rainmaster said no. That young man was about 16 or 17. His body type very close to that of your Highness. Oh, that was completely out of Lian's expectations. 16 or 17, Long Ying isn't that old. So is it him? Based on the current information, nothing could be concluded. What? What is happening? What? Pei Ming tossed the little medicinal bottle aside after he was done and said, well, either way, we'll all end up in the kiln in the end, so let's just wait and see. Okay. He was a martial god after all, and his recovery speed was exceptionally fast. With just a bottle of medicine, the severe wound was already pretty much healed. The Rainmaster inclined her head. Why doesn't General Pei have a sword? Pei Ming hadn't expected that she would actively ask him that question and hadn't figured out how best to respond. On the side, Pei Su, who was finally conscious, answered while eating a roasted sweet potato. General Pei's sword was snapped. When the Rainmaster heard this, she contemplated for a moment before removing her own sword and handed it to Pei Ming in both hands. There wasn't anything off about her expression, and both her words and actions were very well mannered. However, Pei Ming's face changed slightly, looking as if she was giving a poisonous snake. After some hesitation, he said, well, thanks, but this is the Rainmaster's sacred guardian sword. It's probably inappropriate wielded in my hands. General Pei is a martial god, a skilled swordsman. Since we are here to prevent the birth of a new ghost king, then this sword would be more effective if wielded by you rather than me. Pei Ming hesitated after another good while, but in the end still very politely declined. Pei thanks Queen Yushi for her kindness, but there's no need. Seeing this, the Rainmaster no longer pushed. The few of them chatted for a bit, and the Rainmaster also inquired whether they had any news of the Windmaster. Oh! Only then did Lian learn the Rainmaster had been also sent out a search, but it was fruitless and couldn't help but sigh. The group of them decided that they would rest for another 2 hours before continuing on their way. Lian walked off for a bit, and had just wanted to find a tree to lean against and lie down for a bit, but Hua Chong dug out a bunch of ropes and cloth from who knows where and set up 2 swinging hammock beds between 2 trees. Oh, would you look at that? The 2 of them climbed in, and there was ample space, very comfortable to lie in. Oh my God. You're so smooth. After lying for a bit, Lian had his arms pillowing the back of his head, and he wondered aloud in confusion. Song Long, why won't General Pei take the Rainmaster's sword? A martial god lost his weapon, but he's not anxious to find another one? Was he waiting to be beat? Hua Chong pillowed his arms behind his head and replied leisurely, someone like Pei Ming, while he loves women, might not think highly of women. Since he had to be saved, and it was by a woman, and one he knew in the past no less, he must be quite frustrated, thinking it's embarrassing. Besides, the Rainmaster had disciplined his descendant before. Perhaps he felt the Rainmaster was trying to make fun of him. How could he possibly take the sword? What nonsensical pride, Lian commented. By the way, so long did you see? There's an old scar on the Lord Rainmaster's neck. I don't need to see to know. She's the princess who slit her throat, after all. I knew it. Oh, okay. Did Gege notice the Rainmaster speaks slowly? That's also caused by the scar on her neck. Ah, and here I thought it was because of her personality. As a princess, why did she have to slit her own throat? Sean G's, have you forgotten how your queenship came to be? Also made me curious. How did her queenship come to be? It's a long story, Hua Chang replied, but I'll make it short. It turns out, while Yushi Huang was a royal descent of the kingdom of Yushi, first, she was a daughter. Second, she was born from a concubine of the lowest rank, so her status wasn't high. With her introverted personality and awkwardness, the 15 older brothers and sisters above and the younger brothers and sisters below, each and every one of them were in more favor than her. The royal cultivation hall of the kingdom of Yushi was in the temple of Yulong. Throughout history, every ruler would select a royal descendant to go and cultivate, to pray for prosperity and peace, to express sincerity to the heavens. It sounded grand, but in truth it was hard labor. The method of cultivation the temple of Yulong practiced was hard labor. No servants or any item of comfort was permitted, and once there, they too had to do manual labor. In the past, this position was pushed around. Some would even spend an impressive fortune to find a replacement. However, when this generation came around, there was no selection process. Yushi Huang was decided on from the get-go. No wonder Shanji sounded like she didn't think highly of the Rainmaster. Of course. Shanji might not be a princess, but she also came from an impressive background with many suitors. She was more valued in the eyes of royalty and nobility. Now that Shanji had ruined herself like this, no wonder she couldn't stand the Rainmaster, who still planted fields so tranquilly. The Rainmaster urged her to let go, but in Shanji's eyes, her words were probably seen as condescendingly sarcastic. Shilin shook his head. While they were born from a royal background and both entered royal cultivation halls, the Rainmaster's experience was completely different from his. In any case, after that, the Rainmaster spent her days in peace and cultivation in the temple of Yulong, until one day, a few esteemed guests came from the kingdom of Zhuli. Zhuli and Yushi didn't immediately fall out. There was some forced civility and false courtesy at first. In order to maintain the bogus peace, the kingdom of Zhuli sent a few royals, generals, and civil officials to attend the national banquet of the kingdom of Yushi and to pay a visit to Yushi's royal cultivation hall while they were at it. That day, Yushi Huang was cleaning the shingles on the roof of the temple when she was about to come down and found that someone had taken the ladder away. People at the bottom saw someone stuck at the top of the roof, unable to come down, and all thought of it as funny. Even the princesses and princes of Yushi were snickering with their mouths covered. It was only a general of Zhuli who, after chuckling, leapt up and brought her down. The general, of course, was Pei Ming. And just then a voice spoke up suddenly. That guy, Pei Ming, he's like that no matter where he goes. A dog that needs to piss and mark his territory everywhere. Shilian was instantly pulled back to the present by this malicious and vulgar comparison, and when he looked back, he picked up the unbelievably shrunken little sword. He said, General Rong, when did you break free of the mouth-sealing talisman? It seems you really want to talk. Let this ancestor speak, Rong Guang said. I know every sordid affair Pei Ming has had. 3 days and 3 nights won't be enough to tell it all. He knew Zhuli was going to invade Yushi, but he still went and seduced all the princesses who were most in favor. They were all crazy for him, fighting each other jealously. Don't you think that's a little immoral? Well, it certainly wasn't nice. To smile and laugh with me yesterday, then invade and trample my home today. Shilian felt a little sorry. Did Queen Yushi and General Pei share a good relationship back then, too? There was no relationship, Rong Guang said. That guy Pei Ming has only ever met Yushi Huang twice. There were too many beauties in Yushi. He'd forgotten her the next day. In this world, it wasn't only women who fell out fast. Men fell out fast even faster. The only difference being the end result. When women fell out, it might be over some slaps or scratching, but when men fell out, the end could very well be your death. When Zhuli no longer wished to maintain a false peace, they made up some excuse to invade. Pei Ming led the army and charged all the way to the palace gates, forcing the king of Yushi at the time tied deep within the palace, holding onto the very last line of defense. However, Pei Ming only needed to apply a little bit of pressure, and he could crack that snail shell-like delicate layer of protection that was the palace. I feel like that's an innuendo as well, but we'll talk about that later. But He didn't crush them so simply and instead did something else under Rongguang's suggestion. The Shuli troops brought over hundreds of felons on death row from Yushi, dressed them up as normal civilians, and dragged them before the palace gates. Then he told the king Yushi if he should come out himself and kowtow 3 times to show penance for oppressing his people and kill himself in atonement, he would let those civilians go and not lay a single finger on any of the remaining members of the royal house. If he should refuse, Pei would chop off the civilians' heads. He gave the royals 3 days' time, and every passing day in those 3, a new group would be killed. After 3 days passed, they would invade the palace to kill the royals and then kill the rest of the civilians. General Rong, what a shrewd but beautiful move. Rongguang wasn't mad, he was even pleased. I'll take that as a compliment. The reason Julie used to invade Yushi became thus: the king of Yushi was negligent and oppressive in his rule, and out of justice, Shuli shall save and rescue the suffering people of Yushi. It was a beautiful move. If the king Yushi refused to come out, then he was selfish and didn't love his people. The awkward thing was, King Yushi had always publicized that he loved his people like his children. If his words and actions didn't match, it would sure produce resentment in the people, thinking they'd been deceived. Didn't you say you loved your people like children? Why would you turn around and have the civilians be sacrificed for the sake of royalty? Then this would destroy their loyalty to Yushi royalty. After killing that group of civilians, they could announce that they were felons already on death row anyway, doomed to die, and they were only used to reveal the lies and selfishness of the Yushi royals. Such an immense contrast. It would surely calm the growing fears in the hearts of the Yushi people and would make things go much easier for Julie's subsequent takeover. That's a pretty ballsy move! However, if the King Yushi really did come out and kill himself, whatever, there'd be no difference. They'd save themselves the hassle. Besides, they firmly believed that King Yushi would never come out and kill himself in atonement. Or rather, no monarch would be willing to end their life in humiliation. To bow before civilians and enemy troops, admit one's own mistakes, and then go die, dream on. Yet unexpectedly, after only 1 day, just as Pei Ming was about to order for the execution of the first group of civilians, the ruler of Yushi actually did emerge. Oh, the palace gates opened. The monarch with the sacred sword Yulong hung at the waist had walked out, kneeled before the people, and kowtowed 3 times. Then the sword was pulled, slashing the throat, splashing the gates with blood. Was it the Lord Rainmaster who came out? Yes, it was. Later, it was only after thoroughly interrogating the palace attendants and the other royal descendants that they found out what had happened. Pei Ming and Rongguang and other soldiers were yelling outside the palace, pacing back and forth, laughing nonstop, exceedingly arrogant. Within the palace, on the other hand, it was utter chaos. Crying and wailing filled the air. There was no way King Yushi could go out and kill himself, and he sat upon his throne, his face grim and pale. Meanwhile, all the brothers and sisters who usually fought each other so hard to gain favors howled and wailed for so long. When they didn't see the king move a muscle, they began to very carefully try to persuade him. There were all kinds of reasons. What? This is for the people. Even if you die, your name will go down in history. If this keeps up, the people will be doomed. Everything came out. Yet nothing worked, and soon a day was going to pass. Some of the sons were growing anxious, and they roared at their father in their agitated state. The king hadn't even died yet, and he was instantly outraged, swinging his staff out to beat them. If this was before, then those sons and grandsons would surely never retaliate, but now that they were in a critical state, no one cared. Thus, one of the princes couldn't endure it and fought back. Yet that punch was too powerful, knocking the 60-some-year-old king down, his head covered in blood, unable to get back up. The group of princesses and princesses were stupefied at first, but soon after they realized they were still angry. They restarted discussion on how to drag the unconscious king out and how to complete the difficult request of kowtowing and atoning. Even ridiculous ideas like hanging him like a stringed puppet to control him were part of the heated discussion, and the king's eyes reddened from rage as he listened. Finally, they then decided they'd find 2 people to carry the old king out and complete the atonement. However, now there was a new problem. Who should those 2 people be? It was a dangerous position to be in. Who knows if that Pei Ming should shoot an arrow and kill him dead if he wasn't happy. The dispute and arguments went on and on and on, and suddenly the 16th princess, who had always stood there silently and unnoticeably, said something to the old king who was lying on the ground. Please pass the throne to me. King Yushi gazed at this daughter he had barely looked at all of his life, and from the corner of his eyes a crummy drop of tear finally rolled down. However, it was only 1 drop. Thus, in less than an hour, in the crudest and most rushed succession ceremony in the history of the kingdom of Yushi, the monarch who was least likely to become queen was born. The new queen of Yushi slit her own throat and blood poured like a fountain, no doubt beyond saving. Pei-ming had never thought things would progress like this, and he was completely stunned at the time. Rongbong cursed loudly, yelling, "How did things turn out like this? How could they do this? To have someone insignificant die? Not only could they not destroy the people's loyalty, they couldn't kill the old crook either." Although even the soldiers of Julie couldn't bear to watch anymore and rushed to save the queen, in the end her injury was too great, and the medical officers all said she couldn't be saved. And thus in the end they could only keep their promise and not touch the civilians, nor temporarily lay fingers on the royalty. They sent this monarch to the Temple of Yulong to have her breathe her last before burying her in the royal mausoleum of the Temple of Yulong. Yet no one had imagined that very night, in the moment that Yushi Huang took her last breath, the divine statue of the Rainmaster over her head sighed. Thunder roared and lightning crackled, and a new Rainmaster ascended. Lian mused, no wonder General Pei looked like that when he saw that sword. Oh my god! Oh, we want more chapter! We want more chapter! We want more chapter! Oh my god, the Rainmaster! Oh! Oh! What? Chapter 172, Ride the Black Ox, Flying Hooves Mount the Kiln. That was a sacred guardian sword that Yushi Huang had used to slash her own throat, so of course, it was a spiritual device for sure, but it was also a weapon. Rongbong said Yushi Huang sure is generous, otherwise, she was doing it on purpose to scare him. Think he'd dare use Yulong? Lian couldn't contain anymore. I don't think so. There wasn't any need to be so shrewd. Then he slapped another talisman to seal Rongbong's mouth. It just so happened that right then, Pei-ming also called out from a distance, "Your Highness, Crimson Rain Salt Flower, are you too rested? It's time to put the beds away. Let's get on the road." The resting time wasn't that long in the first place, and time passed while they were chatting. The others stayed behind while Lian, Huachong, and Pei-ming set off. The Rainmaster had a steed and offered to give them a ride to the foot of the Kiln's mountain. Lian thanked her graciously. The black ox shook and transformed and became 3 times bigger than the previous size, now with room to carry 6 people on its back. Its front legs lowered to the ground, it's laying its body low with the Rainmaster mounted, riding at the very front. Pei-ming was next, but he left a large space between the two of them. I was like, oh, come on, Pei-ming, come on! I'm already shipping them. Come on! The last were Lian and Huachong. Lian mounted, and that black ox rose to his feet, now incredibly tall in height. Lian felt its smooth and shiny black coat and was amazed. Lord Rainmaster's steed is truly magical. Song Long, I think you might have mentioned it before, but how did it come to be again? The black ox spread its 4 hooves and started running, the landscapes on either side quickly disappearing behind, incredibly fast and steady. Huachong was sitting behind Lian, lightly hugging his waist, afraid he might fall. Oh my god! It was the door knocker of one of the side doors of the Temple of Yulong, the Royal Cultivation Hall of Yushi. It turns out there was a small custom at the Temple of Yulong. When one saw a golden beast upon the door knocker, they would rub it and add a bit of aura of life. When devotees visited, what they usually rubbed were mostly dragons, tigers, herons, and other such holy beasts. People didn't typically rub the ox, so it was rather deserted and lonely. Thus, while Yushi Huang was cultivating at the Temple of Yulong, every time she went to seek water and passed the door, she'd rub the head of the ox. The door knocker soaked in her essence of life, and when the Rainmaster ascended, the ox ascended with her. As for deputies, she appointed no one else. Oh, I love her. I love it. The black ox sped rapidly, and Lian's body was leaning back against the force slightly, almost like he was sitting in Huachong's embrace. He smiled as he listened. Oh my gosh, there sure isn't anything Song Long doesn't know. It's like no tales or classics can trip you up. Huachong smiled too. Is there anything else Gege wants to know? I'll tell you everything, even if it's within my knowledge. Pei-ming sat in front of them and didn't try to chat with the Rainmaster, so he was listening to them. Indeed, Lord Ghost King, Your Highness, why don't you ask Crimson Rain Salt Flower's background? See if he'll answer you. Oh, Lian's smile faltered. To inquire after the background of a Ghost King was quite rude. To raise an inappropriate example, Lian's mind, this kind of personal secret was no different than asking for the size of a man's manhood. Ah! He instantly changed the subject. That's the comparison you make, Lian? Really? That's what you think it sounds like? I mean, you could ask that too. General Pei. What? And there's bumps up ahead. Watch out. What are you talking about? Just as the words left his lips, the black ox carrying the four of them mooed a long cry as deep as a bell, and Pei Ming was flung off. What the heck? This was truly never heard of nor seen. Flinging aside, mistakes happen after all, but why not fling off the one at the front or the back? Why did it have to be him in the middle? Was that even possible? The ox never paused in its steps. Lian looked back from ahead, his haulers trailing back. Didn't I say there were bumps ahead and to watch out, General Pei? Throughout the entire journey, Pei Ming was flung off 7 to 8 times. Before riding the Rainmaster's guardian steed finally arrived at the foot of the Kiln's mountain. Oh my god. I'm sure Huachang has something to do with that. The Kiln used to be a lusciously green mountain sitting at the heart of the royal capital, its scenery beautiful and elegant, much like Mount Taisang. As its foot was the majestic royal capital, the most prosperous imperial city. This imperial city used to be buried deep underground, but it probably resurfaced after going through many earthquakes, emerging back above ground. Lian sat on the black ox, and his eyes roamed the surroundings for a moment. He was about to dismount when he saw Huachang was standing there with his hand out towards him. Lian's heart skipped a beat, and he gave him his hand before hopping down. Oh, come on! There must be a divine temple here in the imperial city too, right? There certainly is, Huachang replied. Although Pei Ming fell 7 to 8 times during the ride, as expected of a martial god, he was very sturdy, and when he walked, he didn't limp even once. He even reached out to pat the ox's neck. He piped up, the tallest building in the city must either be the palace or the divine temple, I'm guessing. No, the Wuyong temple in the imperial city is on top of the mountain. He pointed, sure enough. Halfway up the deep crimson mountain, there was the corner of an eave peeking out, but the majority of the building itself was hiding behind a misty red shadow. Why is the mountain red? He didn't get to finish his question before suddenly the ox roared and threw its head back. They were already moving ahead, but startled they looked back. The ox was already rolling on the ground, and the rope that was tightly gripped by the Rainmaster's hand loosened. What's going on? The ox let out a human scream. Lian was further away and hadn't seen clearly what was happening, but he didn't see the Rainmaster, who upon hearing that cry pulled out Yulong and struck down towards the black ox. The shine of the blade flashed, and something black and furry was flung away, crashing against the wall in the street, splashing a large, astringent red flower. It was a corpse-eating rat. What screamed earlier wasn't the black ox, but the corpse-eating rat who climbed on the ox while no one was looking and bit it. Although the rat was on the brink of death, it was still screaming. Your Royal Highness, Your Royal Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness, save me, save me, save me! Lian's heart lurched, his ears ringing. Huachang instantly pulled him behind his person, raised his hand, and the corpse-eating rat was blown into a ball of misty blood. Yet the little eyes were still stuck on the wall, shimmering in the madness. What the fudge? MXTX! Lord Rainmaster, I suggest you check over your steed. It's just a scratch. There were more human voices rising from all around. Take me away, take me away. I should have fled long ago. Why shouldn't we have believed his nonsense? What a wrongful death. Gege, Gege, Your Highness. The last line was particularly clear, and it was Huachang's voice. Only then did Lian snap out of it. I'm sorry. Did you understand what they were saying? He nodded. Huachang reached out and covered his ears. Don't listen to them. Those words weren't directed at you. I know. Thousands and thousands of corpse-eating rats came swarming towards the four of them, pouring like a black tide. This was the imperial city, the population much denser than the city before, which meant there were more deceased, providing a more abundant meal for the rats. Thus, their numbers were quite impressive. They were being heavily surrounded, and Pei Ming was growing serious. A thin layer of protection aura covered him. You all leave first. I'll lead them away. Yet unexpectedly, before he even finished, the large ocean-like flock of rats screeched and dashed in a particular direction. They were running towards the Rainmaster. Before anyone had noticed, the Rainmaster had already remounted her black ox and was running away in the opposite direction. The ox had already made a distance of some 10 or so meters away, but it wasn't going fast. It was fast enough the corpse-eating rats couldn't keep up, but slow enough the rats kept her in sight, keeping the perfect distance to lead them away without them catching up. Ah! Yushi Huang called out from a distance, My lords, please go forth on your way. I can lead them away. As the Rainmaster moved, riding her ox, she scattered full and white grains of rice along the way. Rats loved rice by nature, after all. And who knows how many years had been since they'd last saw full and white grains, so they rushed after her. What Pei Ming had wanted to do was robbed by the Rainmaster, and his expression was conflicted. Huachang dropped his hand and said, Gege, let's go. When Lian heard the voices of those corpse-eating rats in his head, it would throb. So when the voices were gone, he left out a breath of relief and nodded. However, Pei Ming turned to them. You're just going to leave like that? Yeah, Huachang said. Pei Ming frowned. The Rainmaster can't possibly take care of all that on her own. It's crazy to run off like that. And after some thought, he finally came to a decision. Your Highness, you both go on first. If I catch up, then we'll meet up at the Divine Temple. And thus he turned and went off to chase after the Rainmaster! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Okay. I'm going to save my fangirling for the discussion. I'm going to save it for then. Okay. Oh! Okay. Lian was perplexed. How come General Pei doesn't think the Rainmaster can take care of herself? Wasn't the situation just now more than obvious the Lord Rainmaster is more than capable? Huachang laughed. He just probably can't stand being protected by a woman. Without wasting any time, the two crossed through the Imperial City and the innumerous empty-shelled stone people and ran towards the big mountain. They finally set foot on the Kiln. The reason why this mountain looked like it was dyed red in the color of blood was because the forests in the mountain were all red. They weren't maples, but they were crimson like maples, the color of blood. Lian could smell the stench of blood. It seemed the nutrients of the plants here consisted of plenty of resentment and human blood. This fourth Wuyong temple was built halfway. We're at the fourth temple, right? The fourth temple, the final one probably. It was built halfway up the Kiln, the largest of the four temples, and in comparison, it was the most well-maintained. Within the walls were also many stone people, their poses and expressions all different. The two ran straight for the Grand Hall. When they entered, sure enough, there was a mural. However, Huachang swept a look and said, it appears someone came before us. Within the Grand Hall, there was only one mural. The other two, while the walls themselves were fine, the surfaces were already slashed and destroyed. This was the first time they encountered this. Lian was slightly dumbfounded. Well, who could have done this? They didn't even know who painted the murals, and now they had to add the mystery of a mural destroyer into the mix. Still, they were short on time, and so they studied the mural that was left. With just one glance, not even a close examination, all the hair on Lian's neck raised. What is this? The mural was completely different from those of the other three temples. There was only one person in the painting. The colors were dark, the lines and faces were extremely twisted. The appearance of the person couldn't be discerned at all, only it was a civilian in tattered clothing. But that was nothing. What made Lian shrink back in chills was this person seemed to be in excruciating pain. He had ripped his own clothing and exposed his own flesh. Upon his body there were three faces, each one contorted as his own. It was the human face disease. Under a shock, Lian unconsciously hugged his head and mumbled, "It's the same, it's exactly the same." The Crown Prince of Wuyong had also encountered the human face disease. Why was this person's experience almost exactly the same as his? Huachang saw how quickly things were going downhill and said to himself, "Your Highness, don't look anymore." After some hesitation, he pulled Lian over and pressed him in his embrace, the tone of his voice firm but gentle. "All right, Your Highness, listen to me. Listen to me. All the murals before were shown chronologically. The last one had the Crown Prince of Wuyong build a sky bridge, so the next one should be the event that came right after. But this mural doesn't connect to the last one at all. The timeline doesn't make sense. Isn't that right?" Just now, Lian was overly shaken by the image of the human face disease, its shadows too great in his heart, which is why he was petrified. However, he came around quickly and instantly began thinking, "You're right, that there must be something missing in between. Someone destroyed the previous two murals that came before we came. Since this person destroyed the other two murals, then why didn't they destroy this one too? Why did they leave just this one? And it just had to be the one of the human face disease." "There are two possibilities," Lian said. Oh, well, Huachang asked why'd they leave this one, and why did it have to be the human face disease? Lian said there are two possibilities. First, they might have thought leaving this mural behind was inconsequential, and it didn't matter if it remained. They were more concerned with us seeing the other two. And the second possibility, Huachang asked. The person actually destroyed all three murals, and this one was painted on afterwards. It's a fake. It could very well be that all the murals we've seen along the way are fake. We've already been very close to the answer, so before that, don't start overthinking things on your own, all right? Ah, oh my god. Oh. Having been buried in his arms for so long, Lian finally completely tossed out that mural from his brain. Only then did he notice the position the two of them were in and was about to pull himself away from the hold. Somebody! Is it Bai Wusheng? Is he tricking him? Is he just playing with Lian? Is he just messing with him? What? How embarrassing, Sun Long. I got over agitated just now. However, Hua Chong didn't allow himself to break away, instead pulling him in closer, smiling. It's nothing to be embarrassed about, but he lowered his head and said, there's a third possibility. The bottom half of Lian's face was still buried in his shoulder, and Hua Chong's voice was right next to his ear, extremely, extremely soft. And other than Lian, no one else could hear. Lian's breath hitched slightly, and he heard Hua Chong whisper, the third possibility is, it wasn't that this person didn't want to destroy all the murals, but they didn't make it in time. Just as they were destroying the other two, we came. So now, they're hiding in the Grand Hall at this very moment. Oh my god! Oh no, is that the end? Is that the end? Is that the end? That's the end! That's the end of the volume! No! No! Oh my gosh! Yee! Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. So... Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I apologize to all of you because I realized as I was reading these chapters, my tongue was getting tied and I was like tripping up on words, but these chapters, this entire volume has made me want to read so quickly to know what was going to happen because the Rain Master is a woman. All right. I didn't see that coming. But you know what else I didn't see coming? The fact that I am totally shipping Pei Ming and the Rain Master, like 1000%. Yes, because reasons, and we're gonna go over them. And so I hope that you all can see the Rain Master Pei Ming ship that I see because it is pretty obvious. So, man, what a cliffhanger! The person that could be in charge of defacing the murals and or making the murals and or this entire debacle is there in the Divine Temple. So, we have lots of things to write on Whiteboard Kun and a lot of things to go over, and I'm really, really excited. But first, we need to go up here and claim if there's anything else that we need to talk about. Bai Jing and Ling Wen are still MIA. I was wondering who was going to show up at the beginning of these chapters because I had an inkling it was going to be the Rain Master because the farmers, right? It makes sense that they would show up to save the farmers. And so when Hua Chong said that somebody's coming, I was like, ooh, is it the Rain Master? But it was either going to be the Rain Master or Ling Wen. One of the two was going to show up. And so I'm glad it was the Rain Master. That seems like a much better choice. But we still don't know where they are. The Goshi and Shanla and the Mountain Spirits, Lian equaling the Prince of Wuyang, I don't know. It does, I think it's important that Hua Chong notes at this point, he's like, look, there were 3 murals at the end of this last temple. I think it's the last temple because it's the 4th temple. We've been doing rules of 4 throughout this. He's like, look, they destroyed the 2 other murals, so there's 3 possibilities. My thought was that the human face disease was a fake. They destroyed the 2 other murals and replaced the actual mural with the human face disease to just troll Lian. I feel like the fact that it could be the white cloth calamity is more and more likely because I'm like, are they the white cloth calamity? Are they the white no face? Because are they just trolling Lian to make him suffer? Because the human face disease showing up makes no sense. Like Hua Chong said, they showed the bridge leading people to the official court. That makes no sense unless there's things from the other murals we don't know about yet. So I want to know what's on the 2 missing murals, obviously, and then I want to know, like, who is it? What are they doing? Have they just been playing games with Lian this whole time to make him think something that's not true? And I'm sure we're gonna find out in volume 6, but I'm like, ugh. So I don't know. And then Long Ying, he gets brought back up in this. Maybe not. We've got some theories, and I want to talk about them there. Windmaster's still MIA. The Rain Master. So we're gonna take the Rain Master off of this. I'm gonna take the Rain Master off of this and replace it with the the destroyed murals. I mean, we're just basically replacing things with other things. I feel like next volume, if we get into Shanla and the Goshi and all this, a lot of things can come off of this next volume, maybe. Bai Wusheng's death, don't know. Lian recognizing Huang and the ashes in the ring and the princess tail. We can take that off of there. Yay! And we don't have to replace it with anything. Yay! But yeah! So the Rainmaster is the princess who slit their throat. Interesting. So if we're gonna, real quick, just to do like a run through of all of our folks here. So the four, just to do real quick, the four tales that we knew were Lian, who is the prince who pleased God, the Windmaster, who was the boy who poured wine, Pei Ming, who was the general who snapped his sword, and then finally Yushi Huang, who was the princess who slit their throat. Her story is so incredible, and I love the Rainmaster. Like, I really love that MXTX has kept the Rainmaster hidden all this time, and we've just kind of been like, oh, they're just a recluse. They're introverted and a recluse, and they're just out to protect their people, and now we get revealed that she's kind of like Lian. She's like a very serene, refined Lian who took it to the ultimate step and took their life to save their people. What the heck, right? And Pei Ming. Oh my god. So yeah, what's interesting is that obviously the Windmaster like knows Lian. Pei Ming knows Lian, and they both hung out with Lian at this point. But Pei Ming also knows the Rainmaster, and the Windmaster also knows Pei Ming through his brother. So there's like a connection, like a little loop between all the four tales, right? And then we have the four calamities, which we know the four calamities are Hua Chong, who has connections to Lian, right? Then we have Qi Rong, who's the not a supreme, he's a savage, but has connections to Lian. And then we have Heshon. Now Heshon's kind of the odd man out. He doesn't really have any connections to Lian. He has connections to the Windmaster. That's pretty much it. He's the odd one out. And then obviously Bai Wusheng, who has a connection to Lian as well. So what the heck, y'all? So yeah, great times. These chapters were amazing. This was a great ending to the volume. It's probably one of my favorite endings, I think, of the volume so far. It's probably one of my favorite endings because it's very decisive. Like, it's a very big cliffhanger, but it's like a very much like they're here with us, and it's like ba-da-da, and you're like, no. So I went back through volume 5 to remind myself what all happened this volume. This was Mount Tonglu. I was like, oh, the Brocade Immortal that gets introduced beginning at volume 4. Oh, Longying, and then that gets introduced volume 4. This volume is literally from the moment Lian and Hua Chong are in the stores to try to escape and look after the Brocade Immortal, escape the gang that are after them, sent supposedly by Qi Rong, to now where they're at Mount Tonglu. Like, this volume was just Mount Tonglu struggles, and Pei Ming and Qi Ying and Yin Yu showing up, and Ling Wen's there too. Like, we went through so much in this volume, but yet we were covering a very concise point. I was like, I feel like volume 4 had a lot more happening in it. I feel like volume 4 was more like jumping from place to place a lot more, and there was much more events happening in volume 4. This was all just Mount Tonglu, but there was so much chaos, right? Volume 4 was a lot of plot exposition happening, and this was a lot of chaos and character development, and it makes sense that Lian and Hua Chong are like this on the cover because it's the two of them bonding. Like, Lian is the most affectionate at this point with Hua Chong, and I feel like next volume it's all going to be tested, because I've only read Modao Zushi. I've not seen Scumvillain yet. That's to come after this is over. But in Modao Zushi, there is the moment of the trial between Wuxin and Lan Wangji where their relationship is tested, right? And obviously in Modao Zushi, it's a lot more sexually charged than this story. So there's a lot more to do with that. But I've been afraid this entire volume that Hua Chong and Lian would get separated, because I feel like Lian at this point in the story doesn't need to be separated from Hua Chong. Hua Chong's like his anchor, and they have the two strings connecting them together. And my fear is that next volume they're going to get separated, because that would be what you would do and make Lian at his most vulnerable. But I hope that doesn't happen. But we'll see. But we'll see, right? So let's talk about these chapters, right? Let's just talk about them. I think it's important to note a couple things about Pei Ming that stand out in this. That Pei Ming is obviously a womanizer. He obviously has a type that here's the thing, he has a type that he can love and leave. He has a type, he's very much into pretty girls, pretty women he can protect. That's the big thing. He wants to be the chivalrous hero that protects the lady, and she's beautiful, and she like swoons into his arms, and he's like, well, I'll just take care of you and all this. And that's Pei Ming's type. And so far there have been 3 women that don't meet that type for him, that he's had very different reactions to. I would say Shanji is amongst these types, right? Or let's say 4 women, right? So you have Shanji, who shows up, she was the general who fell for him. And she was the jealous female type. And I feel like Pei Ming's dealt with jealous women before. I feel like Shanji is not the first woman that he's ever had be jealous over him in other relationships, because he doesn't even remember her. Like, he's just like, wait, who are you again? And then it dawns on him. But she was definitely like a powerful woman that had a position and, you know, a regal status, and she threw it all away to try to like appease to him. And he's like, I do appreciate that Pei Ming says in this set of chapters, he's like, the reason we didn't work out is because, and I know it's been there since the beginning, right? But hearing Pei Ming actually articulate it seals the deal, where he's like, it didn't work out because you got too attached and I didn't want to get attached. Like, and I know it's been there since volume 1, but hearing Pei Ming tell her it explicitly is like, okay, good, closure, great. He didn't want to stay with her because of these reasons, and he's just like, what do you want me to do? And so we have obviously Shanji, but I think the 3 women to focus on are Banyu and Ling Wen, and then obviously Yushi Huang. Now Banyu is in love with Pei Su, and we will talk about that, because her defending Pei Su and standing up to Shanji to defend Pei Su was so satisfying. I was like, girl, you get in there, you save your man, yes. And Pei Ming almost treats her like almost a little daughter-in-law. Like a daughter or sister-in-law. He treats her like, I like that Pei Ming has slowly come around to the fact that maybe he's realized that Pei Su does love her and that she's not going anywhere. And so he's like, fine, little dummy, let me show you how to cook. Fine, if you want to take care of Pei Su, here's what you got to do. Like, that's what it almost feels like. It feels like Pei Ming has come around to the fact that she's not leaving Pei Su's side. And Pei Ming's like, fine, then you just have to, if you're going to stay with my descendant, you got to go along with me. And it's like a very father-in-law, brother-in-law relationship with her. It's not paternal in any way or familial, but it's like you guys are stuck together by marriage to another relative, so you gotta get along. It feels like one of those scenarios. Pei Ming's like, I don't want to get along with you, Banyu, but I know that you're not leaving Pei Su's side, so I might as well just accept it. That's really sweet. And I love that he's like, tries to like, just calls her a little dummy. I'm like, oh my God. I love Banyu's like, I'm not a dummy, I heard. And I love that Banyu is not remotely interested in Pei Ming. Nobody thinks they're together except Shanji, because she's extremely jealous. And it's just this really cute little relationship. Then there's Ling Wen. And Ling Wen, they're like bros. They are bros and besties. And everyone thinks that they're lovers, but they are not. This cements it. I'm like, no, Ling Wen and Pei Ming are not lovers. I don't think they're going to be. I think that they're just like the platonic besties that people confuse for being lovers because they're always together, but they're not. Ling Wen and Yushi Huang have totally different relationships with Pei Ming, and I'm so fascinated because Ling Wen's like kind of like Banyu, where she doesn't need Pei Ming to protect her. She's like, I got this. We're fine, bro. Just leave me alone. But here's the thing. Pei Ming, like Hua Chong says, oh, well, Pei Ming just, he wants to save his dignity. He can't stand the idea of a woman protecting him or not needing his protection. He does not react the same way with Ling Wen and Banyu, both of which who are women that do not need Pei Ming's protection, both of which who are women that do not actively seek him to protect them. He does not have the same reaction to them as he does Yushi Huang. No. Yushi she was one that was killed because of his strategy. And the funny thing is that he had no relationship with her. He had no interest. But he still was there to protect her. He still helped her off the roof and everything. And Rongguang's like, well, he helped her off the roof, but he was just marking his territory, and he never had a relationship with her. He went on to go, like, sleep with her sisters and stuff like that. But my theory is that Pei Ming didn't start a relationship with her because he actually likes her. He has a crush on her. And Pei Ming is like, oh no, I can't catch feels with her. I'll want something more. And that's completely against my nature. Like, I feel that Pei Ming wants to be with Yushi Huang, and he likes her, but to confess that Pei Ming, womanizer of womanizers, the man who doesn't commit, to confess that he has some type of urge to want to commit with her is completely against his nature, and he'd be like, oh, hell no, we can't do that. Not at all. No, but, I mean, him chasing after her at the end, would he have chased after Ling Wen? No. He would have let her go because he knew she could handle it. If Ban Yu left to go take care of things, would he have chased after Ban Yu? No, because he knew she could handle it. Can Rainmaster handle it? Yes, but Pei Ming chases after her anyway. So, I think that he's smitten secretly with the Rainmaster. And that's why he didn't want to see her all these years. That's why he was avoiding her. He was like, I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to be around her because he has a crush. And he just can't admit that Pei Ming, the man who never wanted to commit, has someone in mind that he would be okay with committing to. I ship it hardcore. I'm all about it. And the thing of it is, she fits his type. She's beautiful, and she's serene and calm and feminine, and like has this air of beauty about her and femininity that Ling Wen and Ban Yu don't necessarily have in the traditional sense. So I think it's easier for Pei Ming to like look over Ling Wen and Ban Yu because he's like, oh, you guys aren't my type at all. But not only is the Rainmaster his type physically, but she's a powerful woman that she doesn't need him. And I think that's the problem. I think the problem is she doesn't need Pei Ming, and she just, is nice to him, and he's just like, you're beautiful and you be my type, but you don't need me. And so he's just feeling like, what does he do with himself? I ship it to high heavens. I'm all about it. I can't believe we're getting a ship in the 5th volume just pop up, but I am all about the Rainmaster and Pei Ming. Pei Ming likes his water masters, right? He likes Shi Wudu, and he likes the Rainmaster Yushi. I'm like, oh my god, I love it. Freaking amazing. So anyway, Shanji, like, we have waited for this reunion for so long between her and Pei Ming, and it's everything I imagined it would be, where she gets completely ignored by him. I love that she just ignores Qirong, pushes him aside, doesn't care about him, goes straight to Pei Ming, and that Lian gets a little laugh out of that, like, like sticking it to Qirong of all things. But then she like chides Pei Ming because she says his standards low. I like that Ban Yu, poor Ban Yu, like everybody says that she's not up to Pei Ming's standards. Ban Yu's like, am I a troll? like she's so pretty, but I'm like, why are you guys dissing on Ban Yu? Leave her alone. It's just because she looks really young, I'm sure. But then the idea of Rui. Okay, no, we need to put down Rui in here. We need to put down Rui, the destroyed murals. I'm going to replace the memories here because we know that kind of connects to this whole Wu Young Prince thing. And I'm going to put the murals on here. No, we're going to put Rui on here of unexplained plot points because MXTX, why? Why did you just decide to throw that line out there? Like, Pei Ming's like, I'll have to forge a spiritual device like Rui. And Lian says, if you knew how it was forged, you wouldn't say so. Well, damn it, tell us how it was forged, Lian. What is it? Giving us this mystery? How dare you? How dare you? And so we find out that Shanji, still being a general, still having some prowess, decided to knock over the pot to have Rongguang come out and stab Pei Ming. I'm glad, one, that Pei Ming is a deity, so he's not dead. And two, I'm glad that Kamo did not get tossed out and broken as well. I thought that was what was going to happen. I thought Kamo was going to get tossed out, and it was just going to be this big giant mess, because we know Kamo and Shanji know each other from volume 1 when they were like probably sealed in the mountain together. I'm like, I feel like that would have been too much chaos. I'm like, so I'm glad that that didn't happen. I'm like, no, would have been bad. Hwa-Chong probably would have had to step in. And that's when they notice that the Rainmaster is coming. I feel bad for Pei-Su, because Pei-Su is like, I didn't ask for any of this to get involved. My ancestor told me to come take care of you. I didn't want to know you. And then she tries to attack Pei-Su, and Banyu stops her. I love that. I love that Banyu like grabs her wrists, and she's like, you leave my Pei-Su alone. Aside from Hualien being my OTP in this, Banyu and Pei-Su, I'm like, they are OTP material too. They are so perfect for each other. It's so wonderful. And she's just so jealous she can't see that Banyu is not trying to protect Pei Ming. She's trying to protect Pei-Su, because that's who she really cares about. I love Pei Ming has to constantly say they're not my lover. Interestingly, around Banyu and Ling Wen, not around Yushi. What's so fascinating is I feel like Yushi Huang, even though she was considered to be like the daughter of a concubine and she was really low status and whatever, is Pei Ming, is she a league above Pei Ming? Is Pei Ming out of her league? Is she out of Pei Ming's league? I feel like that's the case. Like, she's too good for Pei Ming. And I feel like she's the one person that Pei Ming, nobody would expect Pei Ming to be able to seduce. And so he's just like, well damn it, why not? Right? I feel like Pei Ming's like, well, what do you mean I could, it's so fun to see Pei Ming flustered around a woman, because it never happens. This entire series, he's never been flustered around a woman, but Yushi like completely gets his goat. It's absolutely amazing. I love it. And then she just shows up, and Shanji has the big giant monologue where she screams, why can't Pei Ming love her? And he's like, I didn't visit you because I knew you'd go crazy if I did. I'm glad we get that confirmed, because one of the big things I was getting on to Pei Ming about in volume 1 was I was like, why did you send Pei-Su? Like, that was really rude. Why would you do that? No wonder she'd have a reaction. But Pei Ming says, I didn't send myself because I knew you'd freak out. Glad he's self-aware. I'm glad there was a reason, and it wasn't just because he wasn't even, my fear was he wasn't even thinking about it. He was just like, oh, I don't know her, send Pei-Su. But he was realizing she would freak out and that it wasn't going to work. And I like that Pei Ming's like, I did not expect to die at the hands of a crazy female stage 5 clinger ghost. And then that's when the Rainmaster shows up. I love that I love too that she shows up, and obviously she makes Shanji freeze, because her sword has the power to make those that are of the Yushi Kingdom obey. Like, it's a very specific power of a weapon, of a spiritual device that would not be of much use for anybody else, but it's useful here. And I love that Pei Ming was stunned. Queen Yushi. He like instantly knew. I was like, oh, at that point I was like, oh, okay. All right. And then we have chapter 171, which is the last princess who slit her throat before the palace gates. Yep. So she ends up not being able to move. I love her sword's called Yulong, which is Rain Dragon. And they make the sword. Hwa-Chong makes the sword very tiny. Makes Rongguang really tiny and seals him up. I was like, yes. And of course, Hwa-Chong's like, well, it's never unsealing because I said so. Again, Hwa-Chong's powers, pretty OP at this point, but I like it. And then the Lord Rainmaster. I love that all of the people, they call her Lord Rainmaster, and they're just so excited to see her. It's wonderful. And then Lian's like, Your Royal Highness, Queen Yushi. And Lian's like, you loaned me your hat from the drought, so I was never able to thank you in person, and my wishes come true today. And then the Rainmaster's like, if I didn't let you bow once, my lord might never relax. She's like, okay, now bygones be bygones. She's like, you've carried this with you for 800 years. We're good now. Let it go. I love it. She's very tranquil. I love it. It's just like a calm rain, right? And then Rongguang makes fun of Pei Ming, saying that he was rescued by a woman and that it's a big deal. I love the ox. I love that the ox was the little knocker nobody would rub, and that's the one that she did every day because he was neglected. and then when she ascended, he came with her and was turned into an ox. That's so sweet. I love that. I love the idea that she represents this kind of like saving those that were abandoned and being selfless. Like she's perfectly selfless in all things. That's kind of an interesting thing about the Rainmaster. She's very selfless. She's the opposite of self-centered. And it's an interesting contrast to Shi Lian back in Shanla, because Shi Lian, you know, everything was about him back then. You know, he was the doting prince. He was the first in line. He was the only. He didn't have any siblings. He was the only one. So you have this cool contrast between Shi Lian, who was like an only child. I mean, Qirong was there, but he was an only child. He was doted on. He was selected for cultivation because of his status, and he was set to be the prince and the king regardless. And he was beloved by all. And in some respects, he was a bit self-centered, because he was, you know, he was self-centered in his agenda. And what I mean by that is he wasn't self-centered in that he did want to help others. He wanted to save Shanla and Yongin, but he wanted his agenda to happen. He was not compromising on that. He's like, no, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do what this is, and it's my way or the highway, and I don't care if I mess up the heavens. I'm going to do it anyway. And then she chided him for that. Then you have Yushi Huang, who had many siblings, and was the least looked at. And she was forced to cultivate. And she chose to take the throne to save her people. I think it's a really cool contrast that you had Shi Lian, who didn't want the throne at all. He just wanted to cultivate, and he constantly would, like, before he ascended and everything, he did complain a little bit. He'd be like, well, why is this like this? And I want to do that, and blah, blah, blah. She never seemed to complain, and she did a really hard work and didn't have any servants. Shi Lian had many servants. She had none, and she still, like, did everything, and she chose to take the throne to save her people. Like, Shi Lian's selfishness was he didn't want to take the throne. He didn't want to take over his father's reign because he wanted to do his own thing. Like, he wanted to, like, he's like, it's a wonderful life. He's like, I want to travel the world and do my own thing, Dad. I don't want to take over. And instead, she, knowing that whoever takes the throne has to kill themselves, is like, I'll do it if it'll save our people. Like, that contrast is so interesting. And I love her for it. Like, I feel so bad for her because she seems to have this horrible life, and then she ends up sacrificing herself to save them all. But before we get to that, poor Guzi. So Guzi ends up with the Daruma doll. So Qirong is sent back. Qirong is left behind. So who's left behind? So Pei Su. I'm going to put this here because I don't want to erase it later. Pei Su is left behind. And Banyu, along with, she has Kamo and Rongguang and Shangji in her possession. Okay. And then they're left behind along with Yin Yu, who has Qi Ying in his possession as the Daruma doll, and then Guzi, who has Qirong as the... This is just like a band of chaos, right? Like, I just picture Yin Yu and Pei Su and Banyu and Guzi all just sitting around a campfire being like, so now what? And then they have these like pots and Daruma dolls of evil surrounding them. Like, that seems absolutely terrifying, right? Seems terrifying, which I guess Yin Yu, he's strong enough, and Banyu is strong enough too, that they'll be fine. They can watch over Guzi and Pei Su, and I feel like their spiritual energy is low enough that nobody's gonna come for them, right? Because it's Shi Lian that they want. So everybody else, like, we'll just leave them. But they're just in this little batch of potential chaos. Because could you imagine if Kamo and Rongguang and Shangji and Qirong get out? Nope. I mean, the jars are what I worry about. I don't worry about the Daruma dolls because Hua Chong's been pretty clear they're not going to have anything happen. But Kamo and Shangji I'm a little worried about. So hopefully that stays okay. But they're left behind. And then the Rainmaster and the Ox end up chasing the rats away. And Pei Ming follows because... well, he just couldn't let her do it by herself. She might get hurt. I was like, that was the other thing. I was like, Pei Ming's like, oh, well, she needs somebody to help her. I gotta go help her. I'm like, I'm like, Pei Ming, she's the Rain Master. She's been handling Mount Tonglu by herself this entire time. She really doesn't need you, but okay. Sure, Jan, sure. And that leaves Hua Chong and Shi Lian at Mount Tonglu, which is probably exactly what the Goshi wants. So, okay. But anyway, so they all have to stay behind. We might have to climb the snowy mountain if the need arises. And then Pei Ming notes that he's had unlucky hurdles after hurdles this entire time. And he's been around Shi Lian and Hua Chong the most. So again, we go back to the idea of the ominous star and the Star of Solitude. Has Pei Ming had all this bad luck because he's been around Shi Lian and Hua Chong together? Shi Lian and Hua Chong together, bad things have happened to pretty much everyone that's been around them together. Windmaster, Lan Chuan-Chu, Qi Rong, Qi Ying, like everybody that's around the two of them, bad things seem to happen. So maybe we should just let Shi Lian and Hua Chong go and have their own Puchi shrine somewhere. I'm just saying. That way they're away from everybody and everything's okay. I don't know. But yeah, I like that Pei Ming's like, I've had all of this bad luck. So then we come up and talk about the man dressed in white. I don't remember if Long Ying was wearing white back in the previous volumes. I looked a little bit, but I couldn't see anything about it. And saying that they had their head wrapped in bandages. Now, does this mean it's Long Ying? No, because it would be very easy for someone to wrap their head in bandages to hide their identity. So I don't think that it's necessarily Long Ying. And the fact that they're 17 with the body type close to the fact that their body type is close to Shi Lian is a little bit concerning, because I'm like, is this the white no face? Are they just playing a trick? Or here's the thing. This is the thing that my theory was. Could it be, and this kind of goes with Long Ying and Bai Wusheng, could it be that Long Ying has been Bai Wusheng this entire time in a smaller form? I mean, Hua Chong made himself smaller. He turned himself into a kid. Why couldn't Bai Wusheng? Why not? And I know Junwoo says that he killed him. I have not believed that once this entire time. Nope, I feel like that's just, they've brought him up too many times. I'm like, no, I don't think Junwoo killed him. I think he thinks that he did, but he didn't really die. Maybe he shrunk down into this kid form to hide his spiritual energy so you couldn't detect him. And he's been hiding and slowly getting bigger and bigger. Kind of like what Hua Chong's been doing. Hua Chong's been getting bigger and bigger as we go. And then he erupted and became the Crimson Rain Sought Flower again. So who's to say that Bai Wusheng wasn't this little kid with the human face disease scars, wrapped his face up, and was posing as that. And then, because here's the thing. If he gave himself the human face disease scars, there's a good chance that he knew Shi Lian wouldn't press and wouldn't question because he'd want to stay away. Shi Lian would be like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to question anymore. Oh, don't want to mess with you. You've got something from my past that traumatizes me. So he didn't want to ask questions. And God, if it turns out to be him this entire time. But it might not be. That's the thing. And Hua Chong brings up a good point in this set of chapters. He's like, look, whoever is messing with Shi Lian, they could have been messing with you from the start. They could have made all this stuff up. It could all be lies. We don't know. They could have done all this to confuse you. So the white cloth person with the head wrapped in bandages could be to confuse Shi Lian as well, to make him think certain things. So Shi Lian asks if Long Ying is in the ghost city, and Hua Chong's like, well, he was, but I can't tell you if he's still there. And the rest of the description doesn't match. So nothing can be concluded. And I like that Pei Ming's like, we're all going to end up at the kiln, so let's just wait and see there. Ha ha ha. Yeah, next volume, we're probably going to find out answers. And I want these answers, but I don't know if I'm ready for them. I don't know if I'm ready for them. I don't. Ugh. So yeah, this is the Rainmaster's sacred guardian sword. And that's when the Rainmaster hands Pei Ming the sword, being like, it would be she's like, take this, you can use this. And he's like, oh no, it would be inappropriate. And she's like, well, you're a martial god, you need a weapon, so it would make more sense for you to have it than me leading up to the mountain. And Pei Ming's like, And part of it is suggested by Rongguang that he doesn't want to take the sword of a woman and admit that he needs it, right? And sure. But I think the other part of it is the fact that she's dead because of Pei Ming. Pei Ming essentially is the reason she's dead. The reason that she ascended, yeah, because she did this grand act and it caused her ascension. But he's the reason she's dead. And he feels a little guilt for that. Like, this is awkward. I don't want to take the sword that I basically caused you to slit your throat with. Like, that seems awkward. You know, he doesn't want to do that. And so Hua Chong tells the story. He takes the long story and makes it short and talks about her being like the bottom of the barrel sibling that ends up cultivating. And I like the idea that the Rain Master was like always with the Temple of Yushi from the start, that there was another Rain Master and she ended up taking that Rain Master's place. That's kind of cool. So it's the idea of there have been rain, thunder, and water and wind masters all along. They just get replaced over time. So there should be another water master eventually show up to take Shi Wudu's place, right? And then we have the idea that she was cleaning shingles on the roof of the temple, cultivating when someone took the ladder away. And I love the visual. I love the visual that everyone is sitting there like laughing at her and they're like, oh, we took your ladder away. And I'm like, that's pretty lame, but okay. And then one general leapt up to bring her down. It was only a General of Zhuli, after chuckling, who leapt up and brought her down. And it was Pei Ming. Mm-hmm. And then Lian's like, well, what kind of relationship did they have? And Rongguang's like, they had no relationship. Pei Ming only met her twice, when she slit her throat and when he helped her off the roof. And there were many beauties in Yushi. He forgot her the next day. So part of me wonders if Pei Ming also feels a little bit bad too, that he's suddenly like, I kind of have this crush on this girl and she's somebody I completely overlooked and like had sex with her sisters and completely left her out of that. Which the Rain Master Yushi, she doesn't seem to care. She's just like, oh, it's fine, whatever. But Pei Ming's probably like, oh, this is just like awkward, you know? And I love it. I like Pei Ming being awkward around women. It's great. And then we have the idea that he didn't crush them so simply. Now this line here, where it was like Pei Ming only needed to apply a bit of pressure and he could crack the snail shell-like delicate layer of protection that was the palace. Is that a sexual innuendo? Is that suggesting Pei Ming like when he says he broke through the barrier with a little bit of pressure? Is my mind in the gutter like anyone else's? I was like, it just seemed like, you know, this impregnable palace suddenly got breached by Pei Ming. Seems like a sexual innuendo. I'm just saying. Seems like it is. And so then they had this idea. I'm amazed that Lian's like, that was a shrewd but beautiful move. Like the sword geek, strategist geek in Lian kind of comes out and he's like, wow, that was an incredibly bold but really good strategy that they took some felons, dressed them as civilians, and said they were going to, and held them as fake hostages, saying that if the king didn't come out and give his life up so that they could take over, he was going to kill the civilians. And they used the words of the king as someone that was for the people against him. And it created all this chaos. And I love the dichotomy of, you have Pei Ming and Rongguang and them like laughing outside the temple being like, we're going to get that king now. And inside it's chaos. And the king's like, what do we do? And the siblings are all like, well, Dad, you need to kill yourself because otherwise what will they think of us? And it's just chaos. And then Yushi sacrifices herself. And she's like, well, then I'll become queen and I'll go out there and kill myself so that the people will be safe. And it completely ruins their plan. Yep. And that line where the king gazes his daughter, like after like they had literally like the kids had punched their own dad and caused him to like have a concussion, his head bleeding, and he's like nearly unconscious, and she's like, pass the throne to me. And it says King Yushi gazed at his daughter. He'd barely been able to look at his entire life, and a crummy drop of a tear ran down. One drop. Like he could only spare a tear for his daughter. And I feel like that's such a cool contrast with her becoming the Rain Master that gives rain to all the people. It's so good. I'm like, MXTX, it's so good. And said blood poured like a fountain, the new Queen of Yushi, the last queen. So they ended up taking over anyway, but it was just like she basically saved the reputation of her family and her people in that moment. And then they had to keep their promise and not touch the civilians or lay a or temporarily lay fingers on the royalty. They just sent her to be buried in the mausoleum, and then she ascended. So Lian's like, no wonder when he looked at the sword, he couldn't take it. Because it would be too shameful to do such a thing, right? And so anyway, yeah, so they shut Rongguang up, they leave him behind, and the ox gets there. I like when they mount the ox again. You have like Hua Chong has like Lian wrapped in his embrace, being like, I'll hold you while we ride on this magnificent steed. And Lian's like, okay. Like, Lian doesn't even fight back at this point. Lian has made it to the point where he's just like, he's so casual about being in Hua Chong's embrace. It's amazing. He's just like, okay, I'll sit with you. It's so good, right? It's so good. But Pei Ming leaves like the 5 feet of space between him and her, being like, oh, no. Which is so uncharacteristic, right? Because I feel like even with Banyu or Ling Wen, like with Banyu and Ling Wen, even though he wouldn't be like romantically interested in them, I feel like he'd just sit by them and be like, whatever, like doesn't mean anything. The fact that he makes himself leave space for her, he actually likes her. And I'm like, look at you, you son of a bitch. I'm like, yes, that's right. And then they manage to get to the Divine Temple. I like that everything, the landscape starts to change, everything. And as they're going, Lian's like, man, Sanlong, there's nothing you don't know. And Pei Ming, who's trying to ignore the Rainmaster because of reasons, is like, why don't you ask about the Crimson Rainsop Flower's origin story? And I'm like, where has this question been the entire time? And Lian's like, oh. And Lian's like, well, we don't ask about a ghost's name because it's very private, but to ask about their personal origin story, he says this secret was no different than asking for the size of a man's manhood. Okay, you should probably ask that too, but it's okay, you'll find out eventually, I'm sure. But 2, the fact that that's where Lian's mind went, he's been around Pei Ming too long. If he's confusing and comparing like people's origins with the size of their manhood, you've been around Pei Ming too much. Your mind's getting in the gutter, Lian. Oh my God. And then that's where I love that Pei Ming gets bumped like 8 times off the ox. I feel like that's Hua Chong being like, get off. Like, this is what you get for making my Gege embarrassed. It's like, haha. And so then they find the Divine Temple. I was really worried for a second the rat biting the ox was like it trying to like burrow inside of it, which is creepy. And then all the rats start appearing and they go towards the Rainmaster because the ox is like the biggest piece of meat there. So that's what they're attracted to. And then they have the screams from the emotions that Lian can hear. I love that Hua Chong like tries to cover his ears and he's like, Gege, don't listen. It's okay. And then the Rainmaster lures the rats away. And then Pei Ming's like, well, we just can't let that happen. So we just need to, I gotta go after her first and then I'll meet you at the Divine Temple. I don't think he's going to. I think that from here on out, if Volume 6 is just Lian and Hua Chong, and then until we get to the climax in Volume 7 or whatever, I don't know how to feel about it. I have no clue what's going to happen, right? So, and so then they step foot in the kiln. And I like that Lian, like, he takes one look at the mural and freaks out because it's someone with the human face disease. And Hua Chong's like, look, the timeline doesn't make sense. It could be somebody messing with you, right? Because you've made it this far. We can't determine, like, it makes no sense in the timeline. Something's off. It could be that all of the murals are fake. Like, we don't know it. Which is a good point. Like, we've treated the murals as if they were, like, lore from long ago. But we also established they were painted rather recent. So it's very possible that this has all been a sham. Why? Which makes me excited. I'm like, I want to know why. What's the deal? And then I like that Lian's like, this is so embarrassing. I just got agitated right now. And I like that he's been like in Hua Chong's embrace the entire time. And then he realizes it and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And Hua Chong's like, no. And he pulls him in tighter instead. And he's like, but there could be a third possibility that they didn't destroy all the murals. They left this one and they're here now. So is it the Goshi? Is it the person wrapped in bandages? Is it someone else? There's so many questions, but I I love that this volume, volume 5, has been Pei Ming focused and Qi Ying and Yin Yu. I love the answers that we've gotten. I love the brocade immortal. It's been, this whole volume was about relationships, because at the very start of it, there was also Zhan Lan and Feng Xin. So this entire volume was about relationships from past to present and how they've changed, how they've developed. Like we had Zhan Lan and Feng Xin and how their relationship changed from the past. We've had Pei Ming and how his relationships with Shanji and the Rainmaster were and how they are now. We have Qi Rong and Guzi and Shanji. We have Shi Lian and Hua Chong, of course, and then Qi Ying and Yin Yu and the Brocade Immortal and Ling Wen. It's all been a big volume of relationships and chaos. And I've loved every minute of it. So the story has gotten better and better. Better and better over the course. This volume, the only downside of this volume was that there were some spoilery things that came out as I was reading it. It's the first time in the series that's really happened. So I'm hoping, though, with my moderators and everything, and the fact that I'll probably have to read ahead with scheduling, that I will go the rest of the series without spoilers. I've ordered volume 7 and 8. I don't want to know the covers, though. They're going to be, when they come in, I'm going to open it up and reveal it on these reactions, and so we'll all be surprised. I should be able, it's going to cut it close, but I should be getting volume 7 right around the time I finish volume 6, which will be exciting. We can just go straight through. And then same with volume 8. Oh my God. But y'all, when I tell you I'm excited for volume 6, I'm really excited. So volume 5's been fun. It's going to go back on the shelf for now. Just back on the shelf for the moment. And then we'll start volume 6. So I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I got a new ship out of these chapter sets, and we got mystery, and I'm ready to start volume 6 next week. So I'll see you all next week as we begin volume 6 of Heaven Official's Blessing. Bye!